To get us started, we'll have Susan Knox, who's a PhD of first year in the chemistry department, presenting My Shiny Teeth and Me.
Hi, everyone. Hello. Hi. How are you today? Good? Yeah? Okay, so as a first-year chemistry student, we do things called rotations. And so rotations are basically where I get to have a taste of all different kinds of chemistry. So because of that, I don't have like one lab that I work in where I'll work in for the next 4 or 5 years. Getting your PhD is a really long process. And so I wanted to talk to you today about something that I've done when I was in college. So this is kind of an extension of something that I've learned, which I think is super interesting. Hopefully you guys think that it's interesting as well. So with that, I'm just going to go into a little bit of my background. So in high school, I had my first research opportunity. And so I know that there are some of you who are in high school right now, so you actually have an opportunity. If you go and you do some Google searching, you yourself might be able to find some kind of research opportunity in the area. So I worked at the Monell Chemical Census Center, which is in Philadelphia. I'm from New Jersey. And so I would take the train in every day to Philadelphia. I'd walk to Monell, and I actually got to do research. And this is where I decided I wanted to be a scientist. I actually got to do some research with humans, so I was like having them smell some different compounds. But it was cool because I had a different kind of perspective on the science. I was working with people versus working with chemicals. Now as a chemistry student, I'm working with the chemicals, but I had some experience with interaction with people. And so that experience really defined that I wanted to be a research scientist. I graduated high school, and then I went to the College of New Jersey. At the College of New Jersey, I did research in 2 different laboratories. I did research in a peptide lab, which basically just kind of small proteins, and I did research in a computational chemistry lab. And so that was awesome because I kind of got a different feel for what chemistry can be. You can have things in a wet lab where you're actually working with proteins, working with peptides, making chemical reactions happen. But you can also do a lot on the computer, and so in the computational lab, I got a lot of that experience. I worked at Johnson & Johnson after 2 summers in high school, and I was actually specifically working on the Listerine product. This was really cool for me. I was working in a consumer division of Johnson & Johnson, so you may know that they're known for pharmaceuticals, but they also have like Johnson & Johnson's baby products, which I'm sure a lot of you have used those products as a parent or as a child. I'm sure they've been used on you. And so it was cool for me to kind of see the science that happens in a consumer location. And so I want to talk to you today, really kind of showing you that the science behind things like your toothpaste, it's super important, it's really relevant, and it's really super interesting. But before we start, I want to promise you that this talk is not to tell you that you shouldn't eat sugar. I had a bunch of these this morning. It was after breakfast, so it was fun. But I did have chocolate pancakes for breakfast. We're continuing on a theme today. But when you look at a package of Chips Ahoy, when you look at the back, you actually see this thing that's like a summary of all the ingredients. And so I want to convey to you today that is super cool. So you have your list of all the ingredients on the back of the package, but you also have this summary sheet. So if you go through, you can see that we have things like sugar, more sugar, high fructose corn syrup, which basically just means sugar. And so we can look at these things on that huge ingredient list, but we can also look at them here on the nutrition facts. And so the nutrition fact is basically acting as the summary sheet for your cookies, for your chips, really anything that you find that's a food item, you can find this nutritional label for. But if you are in the store and you're looking for some toothpaste, you're kind of like, well, what's in my toothpaste? How am I supposed to know? How can I really figure out what the different ingredients mean, what they do for me? And so that's kind of what I want to talk to you today. So we can look at this label on the back of, for example, Colgate, the back of the toothpaste. We can see that there are all these different ingredients, but there's no like nutritional facts summary of, these are the ingredients that are inside your toothpaste. Luckily, they do have an active ingredients portion right over here, it's important because they tell you just simply what these 2 ingredients do and their purposes in the toothpaste, and that's great, but what about all of these inactive ingredients? there's a whole bunch of them, but what are they doing? Do they interact with your teeth? Do they interact with your saliva? What's their importance? And we want to look today, again, there are several different categories of compounds that are in your toothpaste. We're going to go over these today. Fluoride, abrasives, humectants, thickening agents, detergents, and flavor. Because, if you're looking at your toothpaste bottle, you want to know what's going in so you don't end up like SpongeBob, accidentally getting toothpaste in your eyes and then not knowing what that's going to do to your body. So we're going to start out with fluoride. And fluoride, okay, so the slide was transferred and got a little disconnected. Basically, we're going to start over here. A fluorine atom, so fluorine is an element on the periodic table. There are several other elements that we know about. And again, you can look at the periodic table, but fluorine is important in toothpaste. And so fluorine actually can become an ion. So what that means is atoms are made up of protons, neutrons, and electrons. Electrons are negatively charged, protons are positively charged, and neutrons are neutral, so they have no charge. When they lose an electron, so again, that's losing, they can either lose or gain an electron, so they can become more negative or become less negative. And so when they do that, so fluorine, for example, will add an electron and become negatively charged. And so in your teeth, you have bacteria, which can kind of sound gross to you, but I can assure you that you have bacteria all in and around your body. And it's healthy. You really want, like the E. coli that are in your gut, you want them there. So sometimes you have bad bacteria in your mouth, and if you have a food particle left over from your chocolate chip cookies, for example, that the acid that the bacteria secrete, so they're like, oh yay, sugar, I love sugar, I'm going to eat the sugar, and then their byproduct is acid, and so that can degrade your teeth, as you can see from this hole here. And then that's not good. But the cool thing about fluorine is that it actually protects your tooth. And so these fluorine, the blue dots over here, the fluorine is now along that the enamel of your teeth, and so that is preventing it from having that acid be harmful to you. So the food particle is no longer there because you didn't have a hole in your teeth, so you have a healthier tooth. Abrasives, so when I did a Google search for abrasives, the first thing that came up was sandpaper. So I don't want you to think that you have sandpaper in your toothpaste, because that is not true. But there are things like hydrated silica, and so essentially that's just a very fine grain that is going to polish your tooth. And so even though it's not sandpaper exactly, it's kind of like sandpaper, because you use sandpaper to get your wood so that it's super smooth and you don't get a splinter. Essentially, you want to have shiny, polished teeth, and that's what these abrasives are going to do. After you have abrasives, you kind of need something that's going to make sure that you don't just have liquid. And so this is what you would do is you'd use humectants. So I kind of think humectants is a funny word. Does anyone want to try saying it with me? Yeah? Oh, okay. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Humectant. Yeah, okay. So I think it's a funny word. Essentially, the purpose of it is that it prevents the loss of water. And so the way that it does this is that there's a hydrophilic portion. And so hydrophilic means it loves water. And so humectants are hydrophilic. They love water. They want to take water in. They want to hug the water. There's also things that are hydrophobic in life, and so they hate water. So that's like if you don't like swimming, you're basically hydrophobic. You don't want to go in the pool. You don't want to go be a mermaid and fish in the pool. And so again, humectants are also important in toothpaste. And like SpongeBob, he's hydrophilic. He really likes, he knows what he's brushing his teeth with, and he also knows that he really likes water. Similar to humectants are thickening agents, and thickening agents are essentially to ensure that you're not just using water on your teeth or like a liquid, so that you actually get this paste formation. And so you can see in the diagram below here, if you saw that run once, you can see it run again. This one is without a thickening agent, and this one is with. You can see that it's easier for this one to flow and harder for this one to flow. And so this is your paste-like structure that you get by adding a thickening agent to your toothpaste. And so detergents are great. Detergents, basically, you can you wash the dishes and you use soap on them, and all of like the food pieces wash away. Essentially, that's also happening in your teeth. So we talked about earlier hydrophilic and hydrophobic. So detergents have, they can form structures called micelles that have hydrophilic heads and hydrophobic tails. So basically, you have a ball-like structure. And when you have, when the detergent encounters a piece of food on your tooth, it will capture the food, because the food is actually more hydrophobic than it is hydrophilic, captures the food and then washes it away. So I put this funny cartoon here. So basically, this piece of grime wants the water. Like if you just had water and you said, hey, let's get you out of the mouth, it's not going to want to go. It said no. And then if you add some soap, though, you have, again, the hydrophobic tails and the hydrophilic tails. And he doesn't look too happy, but it doesn't really matter because the hydrophobic tails are attached to the molecule, and they're getting rid of the extra food pieces. There's just one big problem with detergents. They taste terrible. So if you've ever eaten soap, I have. It doesn't taste good. I don't recommend it. But that's the thing is you don't want to be using a product where it's just going to taste like soap. Would anyone brush their teeth? Like you can raise your hand. Would you brush your teeth if it tasted like soap? Oh, someone. You guys are kind of raising your hand. You don't want to raise your hand. You want to keep your hand down. So you don't want to raise your hand. You don't want something to taste like soap. You want something to be fun and flavorful. So they use flavors. So a lot of companies, there's some crazy flavors out there. I don't know if I would really want to have like barbecue flavored toothpaste, but they've done a lot of different studies that these are some popular flavors. And so yeah, if you're interested in any of these flavors, you can find some of them, you can Google them and buy them. I like my mint flavored toothpaste because I feel very clean afterwards after using it. But that's the cool thing. So companies want to make sure that you want to buy the product. If you had something that tasted like soap, you're not going to buy a toothpaste. But if you have something that tastes like Oreo cookies, or maybe Chips Ahoy, then maybe you're going to have a bunch of people who want to buy the product. And so I want to convey to you today that even though there are different ingredients involved in toothpaste, so we looked at a lot of the inactive ingredients today. Fluoride was one of the active ingredients, but you can actually see different things occurring. And so if we go through this again, we can do some examples. If we see sodium fluoride on this, this is what the label is on the toothpaste itself, and we compare that. I made this as a toothpaste facts. You guys will all get a handout after you leave today that has this chart on it as well, so you can look at it again. And so sodium fluoride is found in the label, and we can also add it to our own summary facts sheet. Again, hydrated silica was an abrasive example. Water is super important still. Humectants, that funny word. Again, so you can go through all of these different ingredients in your toothpaste and you can categorize them to their importance and what they're doing in your body. And so that's super important. I want to convey to you today, again, I'm sorry that the slides are a little messed up. They were converted from my computer to another computer. But you will get that summary sheet so that will have all the different kinds of ingredients. I want to challenge the students to go home today, look at your toothpaste, and I want you to see on the back if there's anything that we talked about today that you can identify and you can say, I know what this does in my toothpaste. In addition to that, a lot of these things, because they are safe to use in toothpaste, they're also used in other products like lotions, dish soap, for example. And so I want you to also look for another product that's not toothpaste in your house that has some of these ingredients that we talked about today. To help you do that, again, I have the handout that will have the list of different, some examples of ingredients and things like that, with some additional links if you're interested in more info. And again, I want to convey to you that every ingredient that you have in any of the products that you're using has a purpose. I want to thank you for having me speak today. The last thing I want to talk about, just so you kind of understand that science is important. The reason I was really interested in giving this talk today was because I found out that science has a purpose in consumer goods. And so basically scientists at companies like Johnson & Johnson and other consumer companies are taking science that is current and new and like things that have been discovered in the last year, and they're applying it to their products. So instead of Listerine, for example, being the same Listerine for the last however many years since it's been it was first made. They've changed things about it, not just the flavor, they've actually changed some of the science about it so that it improves the product, it's improving how it's working in your mouth. So I want to convey to you that that is done by a team of individuals. So not just the scientists, it's also super important in the industry to have sales, brand management, consumer science. So consumer science actually is a really cool opportunity for students who like to interact with people. You can actually do consumer science studies, and so they'll do studies to figure out, what flavors should we use. So like, do we really want to have a barbecue flavored toothpaste? Is that a good idea? And so they'll have groups of individuals like you, people from the community come in and actually give like a discussion panel, and so they'll talk about these are some things I think are really cool, these are some things I don't think are cool, and they'll come up with new products that they want to do. And so as a consumer scientist, you would either be able to engage with those individuals in a room, or you could actually like observe them from behind like one of those screens where like you think it's a mirror, but you can actually see the other way. So those are just some cool things. Regulatory, so you're making sure that the materials that are coming in, you're making sure that the materials as they move through different processes, in the company that they're correct, they're moving in the correct ways. So I just again want to impart to you that there are a lot of roles in industry that people don't necessarily always think about. So it's cool to be in middle school or high school and saying, okay, like I don't just have to be a scientist if I want to go work at Johnson & Johnson or something like that. There are a lot of different roles depending on what you're interested in. So again, thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed my talk. I hope you enjoy the rest of the talks. And have a great day. Yeah, so I'm not sure for abrasives exactly, but there are different ingredients between kids' toothpaste and adult toothpaste. There are different, there are different levels, like concentrations of how much of something you're allowed to have as a kid versus how much you're allowed to have as an adult. And so basically, you can go online, and so some of those things had ranges in that, like the nutritional summary sheet of the toothpaste. So those ranges are sometimes for, because you are a kid, you can't have this much fluoride or something like that versus an adult. And so you can go, again, you can just look those things up online if you want to have a specific number. Yes? The gum, so cellulose gum is just an example of a thickening agent. So it's not gum like, chewing gum. It's a compound of cellulose, comes from plants. And so basically it's just a thick, sticky kind of thing. You can think of it like marshmallows when you kind of melt them a little bit, like in a s'more, and you open the s'more up and, it's kind of thick and sticky. Again, a thickening agent, that's what it does. And so the gum, like the cellulose gum, so the reason it's called cellulose gum is because it's kind of like a sticky, like a gum that you eat, but it's not actually like chewing gum. Yeah. Yes?
Are there any ingredients in toothpaste that have to be banned because they're honestly harmful?
So there's some controversy in some of the ingredients. If you look up triclosan, that has been a compound that there has been controversy over. I included a link on the summary sheet to the FDA's website about their stance on triclosan. It is not banned, but there has been some research, and so depending on your stance of, it's an individual basis. So there are toothpaste that don't have triclosan in it. There are toothpaste that do have triclosan in it. Again, you can go to the website that's on the sheet that you get, so you can learn more. So there's one more question. How do you make toothpaste? So I work on making Listerine. I didn't totally work on making toothpaste, but basically, as a chemist or any other kind of scientist, you can be lots of different kinds of scientists. Basically, you can mix things together. I'm not sure the specifics of toothpaste preparation itself. Listerine is basically, you just mix all the liquids together, and then you get some solids, mix those in, and they dissolve, and you get Listerine. Toothpaste is going to be a little more difficult because it's a paste, it's not really liquid, and so you have all those other ingredients that you have to make sure things mix in super well. But I'm sure if you search that online, you can find a little bit more out.